A bomber older than the electric guitar, older than color television, older than the pilots who fly it today. It first took off in November 1952, and it is still flying combat missions in 2026. Its 4 engines are so loud, submarines can hear it from underwater, and Russia is planning to keep it in service until at least 2040. Meet the Tupolev Tu-95 Bear. So, let us go back to 1950. Stalin is watching Boeing B-29s fly across the Pacific and worrying. The Americans have a real intercontinental bomber. Moscow does not, which means if the Cold War turns hot, the Americans can strike Moscow. But Moscow cannot strike Washington. That was not acceptable. So Soviet leadership put out a request: build us a bomber, something that can fly at least 8,000 kilometers, roughly 5,000 miles, carry an 11,000 kilogram payload, and reach the continental United States and come home. The obvious answer at the time was a jet. Jets were the future. Boeing's B-52 would fly 2 years later in 1952, built entirely around jet propulsion. So most Soviet designers assumed the answer had to be a jet too. But Andrei Tupolev, one of the giants of Russian aviation, disagreed loudly because he understood one crucial fact about the jets of the early 1950s. They drank fuel like nothing else. And to fly a bomber across the entire northern hemisphere and back, you needed range. Serious range. Jets could not deliver it. Not yet. And Tupolev had the data to prove it. His engineers had calculated the fuel burn of every early jet engine available and every proposed one. The B-52 would barely reach America because it had 8 jet engines drinking fuel constantly. Meanwhile, the Bear could reach America because turboprops sipped it by comparison. And range was the whole point of the mission. A bomber that could hit America and come home. The Americans went jet. Moscow would go the other way. And to do it, they needed one very unusual engine. Tupolev bet on turboprops, turbine engines, that spin propellers. Turboprops burn far less fuel than jets at cruise speeds, which meant much longer range. The problem? Nobody had ever built a turboprop powerful enough to lift a strategic bomber. Not the Americans, not the British, nobody. So Tupolev did something interesting. He turned to captured German engineers, specifically Ferdinand Brandner and a team of ex-Junkers prisoner engineers who had been swept up in 1946 as part of Operation Spiderweb. They knew turboprop technology as well as anyone in the world. Brandner's team developed the Kuznetsov NK-12, still, over 70 years later, one of the most powerful turboprop engines ever built. 12,000 horsepower per unit, driving 2 4-blade contra-rotating propellers, which is what gives the Bear its unmistakable growl. Now here is the interesting part. The propeller tips move so fast they actually break the sound barrier, which produces a low-frequency roar loud enough to be picked up by submarine passive sonar. That is right. The Tu-95 is so noisy you can hear it underwater. Not something the Soviets planned, but not something they minded either. And there is a real strategic angle to this. During Cold War patrols over the North Atlantic, US Navy submarines could track approaching bears at ranges of dozens of kilometers just by listening, which meant the aircraft was, in a sense, its own visible signature. A flying billboard that said, "We are here," an engine designed by Germans, propellers that go supersonic at the tips, and a noise signature audible from under the ocean, which brings us to the airframe itself. Alright, here is the aircraft. Length approximately 46 meters, about 152 feet. Wingspan 50 meters, 164 feet, which is wider than a Boeing 737. Maximum takeoff weight 188,000 kilograms, roughly 415,000 pounds. So this is a serious aeroplane, not the biggest bomber ever built, but big enough. 4 Kuznetsov NK-12s mounted on the wings, retractable tricycle landing gear, and a distinctive 35-degree swept-back wing. That was quietly one of the most controversial design decisions of the whole project. Here is why. Swept wings in the early 1950s were considered strictly jet territory. They exist to help aircraft approach the speed of sound without shockwave problems. Turboprops traditionally use straight wings because they never go that fast. Tupolev's team put swept wings on a turboprop. which made Western engineers laugh at first. Then it worked. The Bear could cruise close to 700 kilometers per hour, about 430 miles per hour, which for a propeller-driven aircraft, even 7 decades later, is close to the world record. Only a handful of aircraft in history have flown faster on propellers, and every single one of them was also a Tu-95 variant, which tells you how thoroughly Tupolev threaded the needle. The swept wing gave the plane its speed. A high wing position gave it a stable, heavy payload platform, and the tricycle landing gear meant it could take off from Soviet airfields that were, honestly, not always well maintained. Every design choice was deliberately optimized for what the Soviet air forces actually needed, which is not the same thing as optimizing for what looked good in a magazine. Some Bear variants also carried early in-flight refueling probes that let them extend range even further, which we will get to next. A jet-style swept wing married to turboprop engines. Nobody had ever tried it, and it turned out to be one of the best ideas in Cold War aviation. The whole point of this bomber was range, and here is what Tupolev delivered: 15,000 kilometers of unrefueled range, roughly 9,300 miles, which is enough to fly from Moscow to Los Angeles, drop a bomb, and fly all the way back. That was the design brief, and the Bear met it. With aerial refueling from a Tu-16 or later an Il-78 tanker, the endurance becomes essentially unlimited. There is a famous record from 2010 where a Tu-95 stayed in the air for over 43 hours non-stop, 2 full days without landing. Now for context, a modern B-52 Stratofortress has a range of about 14,000 kilometers unrefueled, roughly 8,700 miles. So the Tu-95 actually beats the B-52 on paper, slightly, which is embarrassing for a jet, if you think about it. The reason is simple: turboprops sip fuel, jets drink it. Over 10,000 kilometers of cruise, that fuel efficiency really adds up. Even now, in an age where jet engines have become dramatically more efficient, a turboprop of similar power still uses less fuel per hour at moderate altitudes, which is why the Bear was, and still is, one of the longest-legged bombers ever built. A design chosen for its economy that turned out to have the last laugh over half a century of jets. And there is a further subtle point about long-range mission economics. Cruising at moderate altitude in a turboprop actually consumes less fuel per hour than climbing to jet altitudes and cruising there. Turboprops peak efficiency around 10,000 meters. Jets peak higher. The Bear's optimal cruise regime was, and still is, a sweet spot that a modern strategic jet cannot match on fuel burn alone. A propeller bomber that outranged the jets. Which brings us to the mission it was actually built for: nuclear war. The Bear was designed from day one as a nuclear delivery platform. Its bomb bay was 14.2 meters long, over 46 feet, big enough to swallow essentially any nuclear weapon the Soviet Union built in the 50s and 60s, including the largest one ever detonated. On the 30th of October 1961, a specially modified Tu-95 released the AN-602 device over Novaya Zemlya in the Arctic Ocean. The bomb yielded approximately 50 megatons, which was the largest man-made explosion in history. Nicknamed Tsar Bomba, King of Bombs, the Tu-95 that dropped it was painted white and had specially reinforced landing gear because Tsar Bomba weighed 27,000 kilograms, about 60,000 pounds. The parachute alone weighed nearly a ton and slowed the bomb enough to give the crew time to escape the fireball. And they only just did. The shockwave caught up to them at over 100 kilometers from ground zero. Somehow, the aircraft survived, just. The pilot, Andrei Durnovtsev, was given the Hero of the Soviet Union medal for it, and the Tu-95 lived on to fly again, which, when you consider what it just delivered, is remarkable. Tsar Bomba was originally designed to yield 100 megatons. It was throttled down to 50 because a 100 megaton detonation would have almost certainly killed the crew regardless of parachute delay. Even the reduced yield remains the largest man-made explosion humanity has ever produced. And the delivery vehicle for that record still flies today. 64 years later, the largest bomb in history, delivered by a plane with propellers, which brings us to the strange middle years of the Bear's career, when it went from being a bomber to a spy. Once the Bear entered service in 1956, it became the visible face of Soviet long-range aviation and flew endless probing patrols along NATO borders. Bear reconnaissance flights would cruise up to the edge of British and American airspace, get intercepted by fighters, wave politely at the fighter crews out at the cockpit window, and turn around. It became a Cold War ritual. Both sides expected it. Both sides trained for it. There is a whole photography genre of Royal Air Force Lightnings and Phantoms escorting Bears over the North Sea in the 60s and 70s. Look them up. They are amazing. The Bear was also active in the Falklands War in 1982, not shooting anyone, just watching. Tu-95 reconnaissance versions flew over the South Atlantic, conducting intelligence gathering while the Royal Navy fought its way south. And after the Soviet collapse in 1991, the Bear stopped flying long-range patrols for a while. Then, in 2007, Vladimir Putin ordered them back into the sky. Since then, the Bear has been a regular NATO visitor. Alaska, Japan, Norway, Scotland. Wherever there is a border to test, the Bear turns up. Loud, slow, impossible to hide from radar, which is entirely the point. The Bear was never designed to be sneaky. It was designed to be visible, a political weapon as much as a military one. When Russian television wants to show off strategic aviation, they show a Bear. When Russia wants to remind NATO that the Cold War never fully ended, they send a Bear. The plane is essentially a flying diplomatic message, and for that job, loud, slow, and impossible to miss on radar are actually features, not bugs. There was a period in the 80s and 90s when the Bear seemed to have disappeared from Western airspace. Post-Soviet Russia was broke. Fuel was rationed. Long-range patrols simply stopped. Then, in 2007, they came back. And with them came a whole new generation of NATO fighter pilots who had never seen a Bear in their careers. Suddenly, the intercept photographs started up again. A Cold War tradition, and a modern one. But the Bear never actually fired a shot in anger. Until, remarkably, 2015. Combat. 59 years after entering service, 63 years after the prototype first flew, the Tu-95 saw combat for the first time on the 17th of November, 2015, over Syria. Alongside Tu-16-0 Blackjack and Tu-22 M3 backfire aircraft, Bears launched Kh-101 cruise missiles at ISIS positions, and it was very much a real combat mission. Not a training run, not a patrol, actual weapons launched against actual targets. Then, in 2022, the Bear was pressed into far more sustained combat use as part of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Tu-95 MS bombers have been used almost weekly for cruise missile strikes against Ukrainian infrastructure ever since, which is, honestly, an awkward fact about this beautiful piece of engineering. The Bear was designed to deter World War III. Instead, in its old age, it has become a working tool of a modern regional war. Its cruise missile carrying capacity, 8 Kh-101s on an internal rotary launcher, means one Bear can devastate a target city hundreds of kilometers away without ever crossing the border, which is exactly why Russia still finds it useful. That means a Bear can take off from Engels 2 airbase, fire missiles from over the Caspian Sea, and hit targets deep inside Ukraine without ever entering Ukrainian airspace, which makes the plane essentially untouchable by conventional air defenses, except for one specific vulnerability: a 70-year-old airframe firing modern cruise missiles into a 21st century war, which naturally has consequences, because now everyone wants to blow up your Bears. On the 1st of June 2025, Ukraine executed the most audacious drone strike in aviation history, Operation Spiderweb. Codename Pavutina, the Ukrainian security service smuggled 117 FPV drones into Russia, concealed inside wooden containers on the beds of ordinary trucks. Those trucks then drove to positions near 5 Russian airbases: Belaya, Diaghilevo, Ivanovo, Olenia, Ukranka. And on cue, the container roofs opened remotely, and the drones swarmed out. The strikes targeted 41 aircraft in total at bases spread across 4,000 kilometers. from Murmansk to Irkutsk, around 2,500 miles. According to satellite imagery afterward, at least 3 to 8 TYN-FMS bombers were destroyed at Belaya alone, estimated at $7 billion. And here is why it hurts. Russia stopped building new Tu-95s in 1993. Over 500 were built, but the tooling is gone. You cannot buy new ones. You cannot replace what was destroyed. Each Bear lost to a $600 drone was, in that moment, irreplaceable. And that is the fundamental paradox of the modern Bear. The airframe is designed to project power at range. It is protected by the vast Russian interior, but sitting parked on a runway, it is essentially defenseless against a swarm of cheap consumer drones piloted by teenagers from Kyiv, which is not something Andrei Tupolev could have imagined in 1951. A $7 billion loss to drones that cost less than a used laptop. Which brings us to the obvious question. Why has Russia not just retired this thing? Look, there are 4 reasons the Bear is still flying. 1. There is nothing better in the Russian inventory in that role. The Tu-16-0 Blackjack is newer, faster, and prettier, but there are far fewer of them in service. 2. The Bear's cruise missile carrying capacity is still remarkable. 8 Kh-101s on an internal rotary launcher. When your mission is to launch missiles from safe airspace, you do not need speed or stealth, you just need to carry a lot of missiles a long way. The Bear does that better than almost anything. 3. It is cheaper to modernize the airframe you already have than to build new ones. The TYN-FMSM variant, introduced in the 2010s, fitted upgraded NK-12 MPM engines, new Novella NV, 168 radar, digital avionics, and satellite communications. What you have now is essentially a 1950s skeleton with 21st century organs. 4. Russia has no jet-powered strategic bomber in production. The Tu-16-0 line was restarted in the 2020s, but delivery is slow, very slow. And the promised PAKDA stealth bomber has been in development since 2009 and still has not flown. Until it does, the Bear stays, which is why the current retirement date is not before 2040. That is almost 90 years of continuous service from one airframe design. To put that in perspective, the equivalent American plane, the B-52, first flew in 1952 and is expected to serve until roughly 2050, almost the same numbers, which suggests there is something about strategic bomber design in the early 1950s that just got the fundamentals right. Both sides landed on airframes that would still be relevant a century after their first flight, which is a subtle compliment to the engineering culture of the early Cold War. When aviation was hitting a rapid technical peak, aircraft companies designed for durability first and efficiency second. Both the B-52 and the Tu-95 are the winners of that approach. Cheaper to keep, nothing to replace it with. Still deadly at what it does, which is essentially the story of the Bear in a sentence. So, why is a 1950s Russian nuclear bomber still in service in 2026? Because it worked the first time. Andrei Tupolev looked at the design problem in 1950 and made 3 unfashionable calls: turboprops instead of jets, swept wings on a propeller aircraft, and an aircraft big enough to swallow essentially any weapon the Soviet Union could build. Every single one of those calls turned out to be right, even 7 decades later. The Bear is loud, it is old, not particularly stealthy, and it has been embarrassed by drones half its age and 1,000th of its cost. But it is still doing the job it was designed to do, deterring by presence, carrying cruise missiles, flying long, and forcing NATO fighters to scramble every time it turns up on the Norwegian coast, which is exactly what Tupolev promised in 1951, a plane that could reach anywhere and come home. He built it, and roughly 500 were made. Around 40 are still flying today, and by the end of the 2030s, the last few will still be climbing out of Engels 2 and Ukrainka and giving Ukrainian and NATO intelligence something to worry about. Not bad for a design that first flew. The world has changed almost beyond recognition since then, but this loud, propeller-driven, brutally practical bomber is still doing the mission it was built for. So tell us, would you have bet on turboprops over jets in 1950? Subscribe for more like this. Thanks for hanging out.